I'm Alex of All Trades, and this is TV Tuesday. It's been a while, I know, but I have something special planned. For some reason, beyond me, Julian Fellowes has written a follow-up film for his hit TV show, Downton Abbey. It's going to premiere in the US on September 20th. Now, say your significant other is a huge fan, or maybe your date just wants to see this movie when it comes out, but you don't want to watch all 52 episodes before you go to see it, and also don't want to spend the whole time utterly lost. Or maybe you just forgot everything that happened on the show and don't have the time to watch it all over again. Well, I'm here to lend you a hand. In this 8-part series, I will tell you everything that happened to everyone on Downton Abbey, and lucky you, I didn't base these on episode summaries online, but took studious notes while rewatching the whole series, so you can be guaranteed that this information is accurate. In this video, I will cover the younger generation, seasons 1 through 3. In the next, the younger generation, seasons 4 through 6. Then the older generations. After that, I will talk about the upstairs servants, and then finally, I will cover the kitchen servants. Downton Abbey starts in April 1912 and takes place in Yorkshire, England, at the noble seat of the Earl of Grantham, known as Downton Abbey. It's called an abbey because it used to be an abbey before Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries and gave the land to the first Earl of Grantham. The house requires a great many servants to run smoothly. This includes a butler, footman, a housekeeper, housemaids, a cook, kitchen maids, and each adult man of the family and male guests have valets, and each married or widowed woman has a lady's maid, both of which perform similar duties in dressing and caring for the grooming and beauty aspects of the ladies and gentlemen. Servants at this time lived in the household and were always unmarried. It was the butler and housekeeper's job to make sure the servants were well behaved and had hiring and firing control over those working under them. These people make up the center of the show. Who they marry, if they will get married, and what babies they may have makes up the majority of the drama and tension on the show. From left to right, we have Lady Mary Crawley, eldest child of the Earl of Grantham, Edith Crawley, the typical middle sister and second eldest, Sybil Crawley, the youngest child of the Earl of Grantham, and Rose McClare, daughter of Lord and Lady Flincher, aka Shrimpy and Susan, relatives of the Crawleys. And then there are all the men in their lives. Matthew Crawley, distant cousin and the next Earl of Grantham and heir to Downton Abbey. Sir Anthony Strachan, neighbor to the Crawleys. Tom Branson, chauffeur at Downton Abbey. Evelyn Napier. Sir Richard Carlisle. Michael Gregson. Jack Ross. Atticus Aldridge. Charles Blake. Sir Anthony/Tony Gillingham. Henry Talbot and Bertie Pelham. And then the other women. Lavinia Swire, Edna Braithwaite, Sarah Bunting, and Mabel Lane Fox. So what's the deal with these people? Downton Abbey and the money in it, including all of Cora's significant inheritance, which was her dowry and had prevented Downton Abbey from going under upon her marriage to Robert, will go to the next Earl of Grantham, who has to be a male relative. This rule is called the Entail, and is an issue because Robert only has 3 daughters. His heir, James Crawley, who is a cousin, and his son, Patrick Crawley, who had been engaged to Mary, were both on the Titanic. And we know what happened to most of the men on the Titanic. Mary doesn't care that Patrick is dead, but Edith is really upset. A duke visits and Mary wants him to court her. He convinces Mary to take him to hidden places in the house, and they are caught by Bates looking in one of the male servants' rooms. Mary apologized and the two leave. At dinner, Edith outs Mary's trip to the servants' quarters. The Duke talks to Robert about Mary's standing in the inheritance of the estate to find out that Mary will get nothing. And then the Duke ungraciously says he was never interested in her. After she's rejected, Mary is upset. Matthew Crawley is informed in a letter that he's the heir. Matthew and Isabel move into Crawley House. Matthew didn't want to be the next Earl, but there is no way to refuse it. He complains about being waited on and that the family will try to force one of the daughters on him since he's single. Mary overhears this because she's there to invite them to dinner and makes it clear that she overheard. Matthew apologizes. He gets a job in the neighboring town Ripon, which the family dislikes because gentlemen don't work. The older generation keep trying to get Mary and Matthew into a courtship, but Mary doesn't like Matthew because he is middle class. Matthew feels sorry for Mary because she isn't going to inherit. Mary is corresponding with Evelyn Napier, someone she considers a better match. Evelyn Napier, fuck it, I cannot say his name. Evelyn Napier visits with Mr. Pamuk in tow, who Mary is surprised to learn is attractive. She ignores Evelyn to flirt with Mr. Pamuk, which makes Matthew jealous, and Evelyn takes it as a rejection and decides to pursue other possible wives. Mr. Pamuk kisses Mary and she rebuffs him for being forward. Edith takes Matthew on a tour of the local churches, hoping to catch his interest, but he only has eyes for Mary. Later that night, Mr. Pamuk comes to Mary's room. At first, Mary rejects him, then goes along with his idea of hanky-panky, but then he dies in her bed. She gets Anna, who then gets Cora, and the three of them carry his corpse back to his room. Daisy and Thomas have some knowledge of this. This whole thing has made Mary upset, and Matthew tries to comfort her about Mr. Pamuk's death, not knowing just why Mary is so shaken by it. Mary and Matthew get along better. Under request from Violet, Matthew investigates the entail to find out that the only way to break it is by a Bill of Parliament. He and Mary are both upset by this, but she doesn't blame him. Mary is more upset with Robert for not trying to break the entail and seeming to care more about Matthew than herself. Tom Branson arrives. He is a self-educated socialist son of an Irish tenant farmer who wants an independent Ireland and a breaking down of the class systems. Since Sybil has expressed an interest in politics, Tom brings her some political pamphlets. Sybil plots to dress Gwen and sneak her away to another town for an interview for a secretary position. Sybil shocks the family by coming down to dinner in evening wear pants instead of a dress. Tom sees it through the window. There are rumors going around that Mary's not chaste, which originated from Thomas mentioning them to another footman he knew who worked for Lord and Lady Flintshire. At a dinner, Mary is shoved at Sir Anthony Strawlin, but Edith shows more interest in him, which makes Mary jealous. So she entices Sir Anthony, which makes Matthew leave, which upsets Mary. When she tries to apologize the next day, Matthew brushes her off. Edith learns from Mrs. O'Brien that Daisy may know something about Mary and Mr. Pamuk, so Edith pretends to be an ear for Daisy to unburden her secret to. Because Mary insults Edith, she writes a letter to the Turkish ambassador, letting him know that Mr. Pamuk died in Mary's bed. Sybil takes the cart into Moulton with Gwen for an interview, but on the way back, the horse goes lame, then runs off, leaving the two of them muddy and late coming home. The rumors going around about Mary are more widespread, worse, and believed. Sir Anthony comes to invite her on a car ride, but she refuses, so Edith invites herself along, and the two connect. He comes by later, and Mary thinks it is to invite her out again, but he asks Edith to a concert instead, who accepts. Sybil attends a political rally in Ripon, which Isabel and Tom force her to leave early as it is a bit rough. Robert wants to fire Tom for driving Sybil there. Sybil later lies to both Robert and Tom about going to a charity committee meeting in Ripon, when really she is going to the by-election. While there, Matthew arrives and a fight breaks out. In the scuffle, Sybil is knocked down, hitting her head on a table and is rendered unconscious. Tom and Matthew bring her to Crawley House to be brought round by Isabel, then to Downton Abbey, where Robert says he's going to fire Tom, but Sybil says she will run away if he holds Tom responsible for this. Tom is concerned about Sybil. Mary sits with Matthew while he has a late dinner, flirting and reminiscing on how they used to treat each other. They kiss. He proposes. She says she needs time to think about it. She tells Cora that she loves him, but she can't marry him without telling him about Mr. Pamuk. Months have passed. The family went to London for the season. Sybil had a coming out ball, and now most of the family has returned to Downton Abbey, but Mary has stayed in London with her Aunt Rosamond. Cora is 4 months pregnant, and if it is a boy, Matthew will be displaced as heir. Mary is told to make Matthew wait for her answer until after the baby is born, or accept him now and change her mind later if the baby is a boy. Mary goes with the first option, which pisses Matthew off since she said she'd give her answer when she got back from London. Due to an accident, Cora loses the baby. Evelyn Napier visits to make sure that Mary knows that he's not the one who spread the rumors about her and Mr. Pamuk, but that the Turkish ambassador had a letter from Edith, and that's how the rumors started. Mary confronts Edith about it, who doesn't even deny it, nor apologize for it. Sir Anthony and Edith continue to spend time together, and Edith is sure he's going to propose at the upcoming garden party. A couple of telephones are being installed at Downton Abbey, and the owner of the company needs a secretary, so Sybil lets Gwen know to apply. Later, when Sybil asks him about Gwen's application, he says that Gwen didn't seem to have any experience since they were trying to hide the details of her current work. So Sybil has Gwen meet him at Downton Abbey. He interviews Gwen and Sybil runs interference for them. At the garden party, Mary tries to say yes to Matthew now that it is clear that he is the heir again, but he withdraws his proposal. Mary tells Sir Anthony that Edith can't shake some old guy who's going to propose to her, so he doesn't propose to Edith. She is aware that this is Mary's doing. Tom answers the phone, which is the telephone company owner calling to say Gwen got the job. He tells Sybil and Gwen, and the three celebrate. Mrs. Hughes warns Tom off from getting too close to Sybil.
What's that?
War were declared.
Matthew is an officer in the British Army and often in the trenches. He's got leave coming up and is looking forward to seeing a certain woman. He's now engaged to Lavinia Swire. Edith is the one to harshly break the news to Mary, who has been getting friendly with Sir Richard Carlisle. While she brushes it off, Mary is upset about Matthew's engagement, but she doesn't show it to him and treats him like a good family friend. She gives him a little toy as a good luck charm, and he's happy that they have reconciled. Edith has Tom teach her how to drive because he may get called up soon. Edith believes that able men should be serving in the war. Sybil keeps getting news that all the men they knew growing up are dying in the war, and it is depressing her. It's suggested to her that if she feels like helping, that she become a nurse, but will first have to learn a few basic skills, so she asks Mrs. Patmore to teach her how to cook. She gets a spot on a training course for nurses. Sybil makes a cake as a surprise for Cora, then she's off to her training. When he drops her off, Tom tells Sybil that he loves her. She tries to brush him off, but when he says he'll hand in his notice because she'll tell her family that he was impertinent and he'll be fired anyway, she says she won't tell them. Matthew is promoted to captain and will be touring England for a while instead of fighting at the front. Mary gets advice from Carson to confess her love to Matthew before he goes back to the front. Mary and Lavinia are worried about him, but Mary does not tell him that she loves him. Sir Richard proposes to Mary despite admitting he doesn't love her, but she says she needs some time to think about it, but she decides that she will marry him. Sir Richard and Lavinia know each other, and the two are seen arguing. Edith starts helping the Drakes with their farm. Her and Mr. Drake really enjoy spending time together, and in a moment alone, they kiss. But his wife sees it, so the next day she writes to Edith, letting her know that her help is no longer needed. Sybil is back at home after her training, but working at the village hospital taking care of wounded officers. One of them, the recently blinded and thus depressed Officer Courtenay, gets close to Sybil and Thomas, but when he's about to be shipped off due to no longer needing actual medical attention, Sybil is against this. He kills himself. Sybil admits to Tom that she could never go back to her old life after being a nurse. Downton Abbey is being converted into a convalescent home that will only take officers. Sybil is the only one who believes that they should take anyone. Sir Richard used to be friends with Lavinia's uncle until she stole political secrets for Sir Richard to publish that would reveal corruption. Lavinia confirms all this to Mary, but Mary refuses to tell Matthew despite prodding to do so. Lavinia clarifies to Mary that she wasn't in a relationship with Sir Richard, but that he held her father's debt. Edith feels like a third wheel. Sybil tells her that she has a purpose and just needs to find it. So Edith starts helping the officers with errands. She excels at this, and the officers love her attention to their non-medical needs. Tom gets called up and tells Sybil that he will go and protest, most likely landing himself in jail, which upsets her. But when he goes for his medical examination, he's invalided out for a heart murmur. He tells her that his cousin was killed by a British soldier in the Easter Rising just because he was Irish. Tom volunteers to act as footman at dinner entertaining a general, at which he plans to embarrass the general by dumping some disgusting slop over him. But the note he left for Sybil about his coming arrest for it is discovered just in time for the servants to stop him, who thought he planned an assassination. Tom will not be arrested for his planned assault of the general. Mary, under Robert's direction, writes to Matthew to let him know she's going to marry Sir Richard. After having received the letter, Matthew goes on patrol and gets lost behind enemy lines. Because William is with him, Edith gets a request from Daisy to find out why they haven't come back on time. So she asks Robert, who tells her in secret that they are missing. But Edith tells Mary anyway, who understands that the information is not shared in malice. While Mary is singing at a concert for the officers, Matthew shows up perfectly fine. Mary is warned that Sybil may get attached to someone outside her class because of the war. Sybil is confused as to why Tom is willing to promise Carson not to stage any more protests, but not herself. Tom says he will stay on at Downton Abbey until Sybil is willing to leave with him. Mary spots the two talking. She warns Sybil off from spending time with him, but Sybil says Mary needs to be on her side. Mary keeps Sybil and Tom's closeness a secret, and Sybil tells her about his proposal. Mary won't break her confidence as long as Sybil doesn't do anything stupid. In talking to Tom, Sybil refers to them as us, making him very happy. But he also belittles her life and work. Matthew goes over the trench for a charge and he is injured. Mary feels it happen. He comes to the Downton Hospital and has spinal damage. Matthew will never walk again, and as such, will never have children. Mary breaks the news of his paralysis to him. Matthew breaks things off with Lavinia because he won't be able to give her children. Meanwhile, Mary learns that Vera knows about Mr. Pamuk and is planning to blackmail Bates into doing her bidding or go to the press with the story. She goes to Sir Richard to get his help. He will help by buying the story exclusively from Vera, but is happy that this puts him and Mary on more even footing. She accepts his proposal. Sir Richard prints their engagement announcement without telling her. Tom and Sybil almost kiss. Matthew is staying at Downton Abbey and he feels a tingling in his legs, but doesn't make it public. Sir Richard is buying the nearby estate of Haxby. Mary has been spending a lot of time with Matthew, so Sir Richard has Cora invite Lavinia back to take her place, and then brings her to Downton Abbey himself. Mary and Sir Richard want Carson to come with them when they marry to help set up Haxby as their home, and it is settled that he will. Sir Richard threatens Mary with blackmail to go through with their marriage. A Canadian officer, going by the name of Patrick Gordon, requests to recover at Downton Abbey, claiming that he is related to the Crawleys and is welcomed without meeting the family. Edith meets him, and he is horribly disfigured. Gordon claims to be Patrick Crawley, but that he was misidentified as Canadian after having been pulled from the waters after the sinking of the Titanic. He also claims that he had amnesia until a blast in the war knocked his memory loose. He also says he knew Edith loved him. She tells Robert, who talks to Gordon and will verify his story, but Gordon does a gesture with his hand over his mouth that Mary has done only once before, suggesting that he is Patrick. We never see this gesture again on the show. Everyone in the family is upset about Gordon, except Matthew, who is so bitter about his paralysis that he believes this is a good thing. Mary is the most upset. Edith keeps spending time with Gordon, though. After the investigation, it is possible that he is Peter Gordon, a Canadian friend of Patrick's. Edith believed he was Patrick, but he leaves and we never see him again. Sybil will give give Tom her answer when the war ends. Downton Abbey is converted back into a private home, but Matthew is still there. Lavinia trips while carrying a tray, and Matthew stands to catch her before she falls. Everyone is very happy. Turns out his spine was just bruised. He and Lavinia will be getting married at Downton Abbey in a couple of months. Matthew is informed that Mary still loves him, but he says he has to honor Lavinia's loyalty. So Richard offers to pay Anna to spy on Mary, but she says she's too busy. He requests that she not tell Mary about the conversation, but it makes its way to Carson and Mary anyway. Carson will now stay at Downton Abbey, much to Mary's disappointment. She also wished that Anna had come to her first with the information of Sir Richard's request. Mary and Sir Richard butt heads over his spine and her possible love for Matthew. Sybil is bored now that she's no longer a nurse. She accepts Tom's proposal. She pretends to be too sick to go to dinner, and Mary finds a note from her informing the family of her elopement. So, Mary, Edith, and Anna go after her. They catch up to her and Tom and convince her to be honest with Robert and Cora and not marry in secret. Mary really wants to convince Sybil not to marry Tom at all. Tom gets a job as a journalist in Dublin, so Sybil and him announce their engagement and they plan to leave after Matthew and Lavinia's wedding. She will live with his mother until they can be married. Tom is fired and stays at the village inn. Robert tries to bully and threaten Sybil by saying she won't have money, but she doesn't care. He later tries to convince, then bribe Tom, but that also doesn't work. As the wedding approaches, several people get sick with Spanish flu, including Lavinia. Matthew and Mary dance alone and kiss, but Lavinia heard them talk about how much they loved each other. She tells Matthew that she doesn't want to be a nuisance and that she knows he loves Mary, so they shouldn't get married. The wedding is canceled because of the illness going around. Lavinia, whom everyone thought was going to survive, dies. Her last words suggesting to Matthew that she let herself die because he didn't love her. At Lavinia's funeral, Matthew tells Mary what Lavinia said and that the two of them can never be together. Robert reconciles with Sybil and Tom, who will be leaving in a few days, saying he will give them money, but he also threatens Tom. Sybil is very happy with Robert's emotional support of her coming marriage. Christmas approaches. Tom and Sybil are married in Dublin and she is pregnant. Only Mary and Edith had attended the wedding. A hunt will be held and a lot of gentlemen are invited, but Edith is upset that Sir Anthony has said no. She meets with him to learn that he has lost the use of one of his arms in the war. She keeps trying to spend more time with him and he keeps putting her off because he is old and crippled. Edith will not be dissuaded. Reggie Swire is dying and Matthew is there for him in the end. Relations between Mary and Sir Richard keep getting worse, with Matthew frequently stepping in to protect Mary from him. She's still going to marry him though, keeping the blackmail secret from Matthew. Finally, Robert finds out about Mr. Pamuk and tells Mary that she shouldn't sacrifice herself to a marriage with Sir Richard to avoid scandal. She's very happy that he doesn't hate her and wants her to find a man who will love her. Mary, Matthew, and Isabel visit Lavinia's grave to inter her father's ashes there. She tells him she's still marrying Sir Richard. Isabel gives Matthew a dressing down because Lavinia wouldn't want him to be unhappy and he should go after Mary. Matthew gets Mary to tell him why she's marrying Sir Richard and he's shocked, but he agrees with Robert that she shouldn't marry Sir Richard for that reason. Mary decides to break her engagement and go to America to ride out the scandal. When she breaks it off with Sir Richard, he's pissed and mean. Matthew interrupts and the two start physically fighting. The next day, Mary apologizes to Sir Richard. He admits he loved her, and she is sorry for the whole mess. Matthew and Mary dance at the servants' ball. Daisy and Anna use a Ouija board, which gives the message that some couple should be happy. The spirit is implied to be Lavinia, and the couple, Mary and Matthew. Matthew proposes to Mary, saying he has no right to judge about Mr. Pamuk, and believes that Lavinia would want him to be happy. Mary says yes. Mary and Matthew's wedding approaches, and Sybil and Tom arrive to attend. No one really knows how to behave with Tom. He doesn't own evening clothes, and the subject of Ireland is a sore one. He visits the servants, but gets a lukewarm reception. Tom tries to move into the pub for the rest of his stay, but Matthew stops him. Lord Merton and his son Larry come to dinner. Larry used to be sweet on Sybil. He's an absolute asshole to Tom, but Tom is the better man. So Larry slips something into Tom's drink, which which Sir Anthony spots. Whatever it was made Tom act like a belligerent drunk at dinner. Sir Anthony outs what Larry did, so the women close ranks around Tom and dress Larry down. Larry stands his ground and insults Tom, and Lord Merton yells at him and apologizes to Tom. Matthew, in a show of solidarity, makes Tom his best man. The next day, Violet forces Tom into more formal wear for the wedding. Edith and Sir Anthony keep getting closer, which bothers some people. Matthew's upset that Reggie Swire had named him in his will as his third heir. The first died before Reggie Swire, and the second is missing. If Matthew is the heir, he won't keep the money. Mary tells him they need the money because Robert lost all of the estate's money, which would mean having to sell Downton Abbey, but he still refuses. Mary is upset and runs to her room. Edith saw it, so the whole family knows the two fought. Tom convinces Matthew not to let Mary go. Mary talks to Anna, who believes that she should still marry Matthew. Mary believes they should call the wedding off since they will always fight, but Matthew convinces her otherwise. Tom's position in the family is better since he prevented the wedding from falling apart. Matthew and Mary get married. Matthew and Mary return from their honeymoon in a new car that he bought. Matthew explains to Robert why he won't take the Swire inheritance. Mary and Violet cook up a plan to ask Mrs. Levinson for the money by impressing her with English noble tradition with a fancy dinner. Mary argues with Cora because she believes that being Lady Grantham means having Downton Abbey. Sir Anthony writes to Edith under direction of Robert, who asked under direction of Violet to end their relationship. But Edith knows damn well it's Robert's doing. She finds comfort in Mrs. Levinson. Edith tells Robert that most of the men in her generation are dead from the war, so he relents and invites Sir Anthony to dinner. Due to servant chicanery, Matthew and Robert end up in black tie at the dinner, but the whole thing is turned upside down because the oven is broken. Mary and Violet are upset that the dinner turns into an indoor picnic. When they ask Mrs. Levinson for the money, at first they think she's saying yes, but actually she can't because her husband tied up the money after Cora's marriage. Sir Anthony and Edith will announce their engagement soon. Edith and Sir Anthony's wedding approaches. Matthew is officially confirmed as the heir of Reggie Swire, and the lawyer meets with him to give him a letter from Reggie Swire, which Matthew refuses to open. Mary reads it anyway, and is sure from it that Lavinia must have written her father just before she died, telling him that her and Matthew wouldn't be getting married. But Matthew doesn't believe that's possible, and thinks the Reggie letter is a forgery. Mary asks the servants if any of them posted a letter for Lavinia, and Daisy admits she did. Matthew is relieved that he can take the money without guilt and save Downton Abbey. He offers the money to Robert, who instead wants Matthew to be co-owner, which Matthew agrees to. On the wedding day, the sisters are all very happy, but at the altar, Sir Anthony has a change of heart, believing that he would be trapping Edith with a dismal future if they married. He leaves her there. Edith locks herself in her room and can't be comforted. She resigns herself to a life as a spinster. Mary wants Matthew to get more involved with the running of the estate. He's reluctant until he hears Robert tell Carson he can hire 3 more employees. Matthew starts looking into the estate management. He tells Violet that the estate management needs to change. Matthew tries to slyly ask Mary if she's pregnant, but she brushes him off. Edith is envious of American women who have recently been given the right to vote. Matthew suggests she should write the Times. She's told to find something to do, so she does as Matthew suggested and writes a letter about the need for the English women to have the vote. But Robert crushes her spirit a bit by saying they'd never print it. The paper writes an article about Edith's letter, and while Robert is angry, her brothers-in-law are pleased for her. Tom shows up suddenly, and Mary hides him upstairs. Edith answers the phone, and it is Sybil saying that she's okay and that no one stopped her. Then she hung up. Tom explains that he was at the burning of a noble house in Ireland, and the police think he's involved. Sybil will follow after him. The family is angry at him for leaving Sybil behind while pregnant. It's unclear if Robert will defend him to the authorities, and Tom cries alone in his room. In the morning, Robert tells Tom he will talk to the authorities for Sybil's sake. Sybil arrives. Tom will not be arrested, but he is banned from Ireland because he had attended meetings where the burning was planned, which shocked Sybil. She's mad at him for attending the meetings and keeping it from her. Tom is upset about being banned from Ireland, but thanks Robert for saving him from prison. The two will stay at Downton Abbey, as Sybil insists, since she's about to have the baby. Mary still isn't pregnant. Matthew is looking forward to having children, but Mary is awkward when the subject is brought up. Matthew starts to worry that he may be sterile. Edith is invited by the editor and owner of the Sketch, a ladies' magazine, to write a column based on her letter about the vote. Robert hurts her feelings by saying they just want her because she's an earl's daughter. Except Matthew, the family doesn't support support her desire to write. Sybil's parents argue over which doctor will handle her childbirth, Dr. Clarkson or the pure specialist Tapsell. Sybil's approaching labor has her ill, but she tells Mary she wants the baby to be Catholic because it's what Tom wants. She doesn't really care about religion herself. Tom is considering becoming a mechanic in Liverpool. Sybil goes into labor. Tom is worried. She becomes delirious. After a urine test, Dr. Clarkson diagnosed her with preeclampsia and states that she needs a C-section, which Tapsell disagrees with. The family argue over what to do. Robert doesn't believe the decision is up to Tom. Mary insists that Tom make the decision, and he doesn't know what to do. It is too late to take her to the hospital, so she gives birth naturally to a girl. Sybil tells Cora she doesn't want Tom to move to Liverpool to become a mechanic. Everyone goes to bed, but is woken as Sybil's condition has worsened. They all gather around her bed as she yells in obvious pain, then seizes, stops breathing, and dies. Both doctors could do nothing to help her. Tom and Cora were beside themselves with panic and sorrow. This is one of the most painful scenes of the show. The next day, Edith asks Mary if maybe they could be closer after this, but Mary doesn't think so. Matthew tries to talk to Murray about the running of the estate, but Mary feels it is insensitive for them to do so right now and makes Murray leave. Tom plans to leave with his daughter soon to go to Liverpool. He names her Sybil and is going to have her christened in the Catholic faith. Mary argues with Robert about all of this, taking Tom's side. She shocks the family by telling them that Sybil wanted her baby to be Catholic, which is a great comfort to Tom. Matthew and Tom talk about the estate, and it turns out Tom knows a lot about tenant farming. Matthew argues with Robert and wants to involve Tom in the running of the estate. Matthew argues with Robert and Jarvis about the running of the estate. Tom thinks Matthew's ideas are good. At another meeting, Matthew gets the support of Murray, and as such, Jarvis quits. Tom is suggested as his replacement, partly as a way of keeping him and Sibby nearby. Matthew is also still worried about his possible sterility. Edith goes to London to meet the editor of the sketch, Michael Gregson. Edith slowly wins over more family members to her writing, Robert being the holdout. At lunch, she tells Michael Gregson about being left at the altar. Tom asks Mary to be Sibby's godmother and asks his brother to be her godfather. The brother is invited to stay at Downton Abbey, but is rude about it, going first to the servants' hall to spend time with them until Tom forces him upstairs. The whole family come to the christening because it's what Sybil would have wanted. The never-before-seen annual house versus village cricket match approaches. Matthew will have to play, and Tom keeps refusing to play because he doesn't know how. Matthew believes that the cricket match is a good way of showing Robert that not everything will change. When Robert would rather invest the money into the actual Ponzi scheme, Matthew is angry. Everyone supports Matthew's ideas, so Robert is a sore loser. Tom convinces him to at least think about staying involved, but only if Tom will play in the cricket match. Mary refuses to have sex with Matthew, and he doesn't know why. Mary asks Edith to make sure Matthew doesn't come back to Downton Abbey early from their London trip, but he runs into her at Dr. Ryder's office under an assumed name. She apparently wasn't previously able to get pregnant and needed a surgery, which she already got, so she should be able to get pregnant in the next few months. Michael Gregson flirts with Edith, but she finds out he's married. When she confronts him, he explains that his wife is insane, and English law doesn't allow him to divorce her. Rose arrives from London to stay with Violet, but goes with Edith straight back to London, where she runs out with a married man, Margadell, and is found out by Rosamond, Edith, and Matthew. Matthew strikes a bargain with her that the whole time she's with the Crawleys, if she doesn't see Margadell again, the three of them will keep it secret. Violet ships her off to Donegal Castle in Scotland with a matron aunt anyway because she figures it out. Tom decides to stay at Downton Abbey instead of moving into the estate agent house. A year has passed. Everyone in the family but Tom and Isabel go to Donegal to visit Shrimpy and Susan. Mary is pregnant. Michael Gregson also goes to Scotland so he can meet Edith's family. He loves her. He talks to Matthew, who thinks he should break it off because all he can offer her is a position as his mistress. He tries to break it off with her, but she won't hear of it. Tom is lonely. A new housemaid, Edna Braithwaite, keeps running into Tom on purpose and pressuring him to spend time with the servants. He eats with them and then drives them to a fair. Mrs. Hughes tries to give Tom advice about being a part of the family. While he's changing in his room, Edna comes in and kisses him. When Mrs. Hughes tells Tom that they are letting Edna go, he starts crying over missing Sybil, and she comforts him. Rose is constantly belittled by Susan. She doesn't want to go with her parents when they leave for Bombay, so she will stay at Downton Abbey while they are gone. Mary decides to go home early as she doesn't feel good. Upon arriving in Downton, she goes into labor. She has the baby at the hospital and the family come to see her. Matthew visits her and their son in the hospital. Then, on his drive back to Downton Abbey to tell the family they can visit, he dies in a car crash. I think we can stop there for now. Next time on Downton Abbey Breakdown, watch the Younger Generation seasons 4 through 6 coming this Thursday. This was TV Tuesday, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe, click the bell, visit my blog at empatheticwriter.wordpress.com, and follow me on Patreon for exclusive content and a shout out on a video. Merch, 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 merch. Yeah. Check out my new shop at cafepress.com/AlexofAllTrades for all kinds of products with my face on them.